Hello, everybody. Welcome back into the LFC Transfer Room. I'm Jack, joined today by Drew and Dan to have a short discussion on Harvey Elliott. No crazy, like, should Harvey Elliott leave? Any rumors like that. It's more so kind of a discussion on what should his future be as a first-team player. He's a young guy, 18 years old. What does his future look like for the rest of the season after coming back from a pretty tough ankle injury that he suffered against Leeds at the very beginning of the season? But before we kind of get into the discussion, Drew, how are you doing on this lovely Monday afternoon?
I'm doing good. Can't wait for the Arsenal game on Thursday. Want us to beat the Gooners at the Emirates, and that would make my week perfect. So looking forward to that, but also looking forward to having a little debate with you about Harvey Elliott.
And Dan, how you doing on this Monday?
Great. I cannot believe we beat Brentford like that, man. I mean, I was so pissed throughout the first half. I thought we were gonna draw the game or lose, but I'm just happy. I'm buzzing that we won, and we're getting closer to Man City. I don't care that anybody's saying that the title race is over. I still think there's a slight chance that we might catch up to them.
Yeah, that it's gonna be. This is actually maybe one of the first times that all three of us are, America. I think we actually have a pretty good representation because Dan, you're Central Time, no?
Central Time, yes.
Because I'm Eastern, Dan Central, Drew, you're Pacific. So we got a really representation of the American viewing audience in the Premier League. And this will kind of look worse with Drew here, but I actually fell asleep on accident and missed most of the first half. So I missed
You didn't miss much. You would have been really mad with the game. I don't know what Drew thinks, but yeah.
Yeah, no.
For viewers.
Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, I was just gonna say for viewers, very boring first half, but I was up at 6 a.m. to watch that. So shame on you, Jack, for falling asleep.
It's 9 a.m. for me. That's actually kind of poor for me because that was gonna be kind of my lead on the Brentford. Yeah, Kumar, it is the American transfer room where we've fully taken over. Actually we saw the best came out before we can get into Harvey Elliott really quick. Interesting comment here. Mo Salah was in the top 3 voting for the best awards. Like he was with him. It was him, Lewandowski, and Messi. Lewandowski ended up winning the award. But Salah didn't make the team of the year. Messi, Ronaldo, Lewandowski, and Neymar. I'm forgetting. If someone in the chat sees it, let me know because it was unbelievable. He was top 3 voting, but didn't make it within the top 4 forwards. But that's another discussion entirely. Let's talk about Harvey Elliott a little bit. Drew, I'll go to you first on this one. It was Erling Haaland. Thank you very much. Both Kumar's and Alexis Spector. Which is, again, maybe not terrible on an individual level, but Salah, I think he should have made it. Drew, I'll go to you first on this one. Harvey Elliott, there's a lot of different discussions on him, but he's obviously coming back into training next week. How soon do you want to see him kind of back into the first team fold? Obviously, a lot of it depends on his injury status, but kind of what do you view the first team future for Harvey Elliott going forward?
I mean, hopefully he comes in as a starter at some point, but I think that he needs to be eased in. Like, it's not something that we should be putting, the weight of the first team on his shoulders. He's 18, 19 years old. But I want him to be eased back into the team, maybe a few sub appearances. But if he's going to dictate how quickly he gets into the first team. If he comes off the bench and just starts lighting up games, then he deserves the spot in the first team. And I want to see him in the first team as well, because we haven't had a player, like Raheem Sterling, to bust into the first team at 17, 18 years old. Trent Alexander-Arnold's the closest we've had to that. But, I want to see that in the attacking forward. Chris Jones maybe, but, Harvey Elliott has that promise to be a first team player.
Yeah, we saw Cade Gordon made an appearance against Brentford, a very young guy, obviously. I think Dan sorted out a little tech thing real quick, but so I want to pose this question as well. I'll pose 2 to Dan at one point, but on as an 8 or on the wing. Actually, Dan, I'll go to you. We won't get the conversation going too far then. Harvey Elliott, how soon do you want to see kind of him tossed back into the first team?
As soon as possible. And honestly, I'm speaking from a former hater perspective, I guess you can say. Not a really hater, but just I didn't believe on Harvey Elliott. I thought it was way too soon. The fact that Jurgen Klopp gave him the opportunity, and in fact, I'm pretty sure you guys were also on the same boat that Harvey Elliott first needed to go to a championship side, prove himself on loan, then come back and go to a Premier League side on loan, and after that, go to the Liverpool first team. But Jurgen Klopp and obviously Harvey Elliott completely shifted everybody's mind, but just adding him straight not only to the first team, but to the first starting 11, to the starting 11. I was shocked. I was like, he shouldn't even be in the first team in the first place. And look at him. Like he fitted perfectly in that midfield. He added that Coutinho factor that we didn't have for many years again. And he was starting ahead of Naby Keita. He was starting ahead of Thiago, who at the time was healthy. He was starting ahead of Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, Curtis Jones. Curtis Jones, who started almost 30 games the season before that. So, I mean, it's just incredible the fact that he shut so many mouths. I mean, I'm now a Harvey Elliott standboy, so he's just incredible. I think he should immediately be sent back to the midfield, to the starting midfield.
And I think there's a couple different ways you can look at Harvey Elliott in almost not a negative light, but I think that this is an interesting comment. I just lost it from Kumar's here. How Harvey Elliott, we're so starved of good youngsters. You've mentioned it a bit, Drew. Trent Alexander-Arnold broke through. Sterling broke through a while back. Curtis Jones is maybe kind of edging towards that, but we don't see too many great young players. So how much of an impact does that play in how we kind of view Harvey Elliott in comparison to how actually good he is? Drew, I'll go to you with that one.
I think as I was saying, it's like necessary to have youngsters coming up and breaking into the squad. It's good for the academy. It's good for, supporters in general to see the youth rising through the ranks. It's like somebody cares about the club. Like I know we signed, Harvey Elliott from Fulham, I think. And, he's not a local lad, but he grew up supporting Liverpool. You have the photos of him as a child wearing a Liverpool jersey. That's what you want to see in the first team. So, yeah, I understand Guimar's comment about we're treating him like the second coming, but and I don't think we should be reliant on him to basically make or break our team. But it's definitely exciting to have him in and around the first team, and I'd love to see him almost take over from where Sterling blew onto the scene and just not leave for Manchester City once he gets going.
I cannot imagine Harvey Elliott pulling a Sterling and ended up at Manchester City. That would be a remarkable change. This is interesting because I think, Dan, you said put him in the midfield. And this is also an interesting discussion because you obviously have Mohamed Salah. Is he the long-term backup for Salah or the long-term replacement, I should say? Or is he the best as one of those, the right-sided 8? For you, Dan, you said put him in the midfield. I'm assuming that you view him not as a forward and as his best attributes with the midfielder instead.
I mean, honestly, I thought he was going to be a winger. I thought he was pacey. But I mean, comparing him to our forwards, he doesn't really have the same pace that our forward line has, In fact, he has pretty good pace for an attacking midfielder. But just not the same pace that our wingers have. In fact, I was watching an interview from his former manager. I believe The Athletic did a little session where they interviewed the manager, and his former manager from Fulham, I think it was, he was saying, listen, Harvey doesn't really have the pace to be a winger, but he definitely has a little bit of pace, and that pace is enough to have him as a midfielder, especially as an attacking mid,
Yeah, I mean, with Sadio Mane and Mohamed Salah as your other forward options, those guys are very quick. Harvey Elliott does not have that kind of same speed. There's another dynamic to this, which is, Harvey Elliott has kind of thrust into this position of having to fill several gaps, especially Jorginho Wijnaldum. Obviously he was led to walk in the summer. The knock-on effect is you lost a very consistent guy, and I think the very natural replacement in terms of just the numbers in the midfield was Harvey Elliott for him. This is an interesting comment from Haylor about, and again, this gets you into the FSG versus not FSG as well. But Joe, go to you on this. Do you think that there should be Harvey Elliott should be playing, but should a midfielder also be a priority, at least in your eyes? For you, Drew.
Yes, that's a tough one for me. I would like to see an attacking midfielder be brought into the club. And I think that's because Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain has not worked out the way I or Kris hoped he would work out into the team. But I think that basically the midfield options are just not at their best right now. And that's not through any lack of trying through FSG. They bought Naby Keita, they brought in Ox, Curtis Jones, yes, we Thiago, it goes on. We have a lot of midfielders. They're just injured or not performing the way we want to. So yeah, Hyler's comment about Harvey Elliott kind of being a disguise for not bringing in transfers is valid. I think the interesting point on that, though, is the Nat Phillips situation, where if he performed really well, but now he's not even getting a look in the team just because everyone's fit and firing. So Matip Gomez can't even get a game. So one of those instances of if we sign an attacking midfielder and he doesn't come into the team and take off, is he just left on the bench while Harvey Elliott is crushing it? And Thiago's having good run of form, and no one's going to replace Fabinho unless he's injured. So it becomes one of those, is it worth spending the money at this point? But I think, we should be moving out the likes of Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, as much as I hate to say that, and potentially Naby Keita if he can't get fit after the African Cup of Nations, and look for a new midfielder. But in this transfer window, I'd solely be looking for maybe a winger that we can bring in.
I agree with that. And Dan, I'll go to you as well. If your mic is looking good, we talk about, and kind of going off of Drew's point, a midfielder, should that be signed as well? Because Harvey Elliott, obviously, there's a lot of responsibility on him to come back and perform very strongly. But do you kind of view a midfielder as a priority for Liverpool?
Can you hear me properly, first of all?
Yes.
Perfect. So, that's a tough one because our forward line is a little bit sketchy at the moment. Sadio Mane's form goes up and down. You never know what to expect. He's become a really inconsistent player. Mohamed Salah is obviously on his best form of his life. And Diogo Jota has obviously come in and surprised everybody. But I would say that we do need an extra winger. But just this season alone, it's been proven that our midfield is just not up to standard. Not just technically, just fitness-wise. Thiago, despite being, for me, one of the best, if not the best midfielder in the world, he can just not play in consistently matches. Same with Henderson, same with Oxlade-Chamberlain, same with Keita. So it's not really a matter of do we add more quality to the team at this point. It's just, can we add a player that can play enough games? James Milner used to be that guy that will never get injured. And this season, he's been getting injured so many times. So at this point, it's just not about the quality. I think it's more about availability. So that being said, I do think midfield should be a priority, and that's where Harvey Elliott comes in.
I'm going to give kind of a different perspective. I think I'm going to be comparing him to a very good player. I'll go to you, Drew, with this one. But the guy I look at as the pinnacle of bringing in a player into a side that's very good and developing a young player is Phil Foden at Manchester City. And there are actually quite a few similarities. Left-footed, English, kind of in playing pretty similar positions. I think Foden might have a touch more pace than Elliott does. But I think that I almost view this as Liverpool are putting too much trust in. I think we see that once he comes back, he's immediately back in the starting lineup. Does that worry you at all in terms of just his, because Dan also mentioned availability. He's had his one big injury. Does that play any role in your decision-making, Drew, that he's coming off of this injury, and that you don't want to put too much pressure on this really young player?
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think that Klopp would be excellent at managing his game time and making sure that we aren't putting too much pressure on him or expectations aren't too high. But I think our situation is different than Manchester City, because Manchester City has like phenomenal world-class players happy riding the bench on huge contracts, and we don't have that same leeway for our players on the bench. So I would like to see more depth and like to see FSG put some more money into the team. But the reality of why we're relying on Harvey Elliott or so hyped up about him coming back is because we need someone to basically take the team forward in the midfield. And he lit up the first few games of the season, made fans very excited. And I don't think there should be too much pressure, but I definitely want him in the first team as quick as possible. And that's dictated by his performances and how Klopp can fit him into the team and manage those expectations. But Jack, I'm actually curious on your side of things, because I know before we started the video that you were talking a bit of stuff about Harvey Elliott being a first-team player. So I'm curious for that.
We need to make it very clear. I'm not saying that he's anywhere. You're making it seem like, oh, I'm a Harvey Elliott hater amongst just a legion of Harvey Elliott just diehards. I don't think he should be, at his age, considering where he's been at, he should not be in a position where he is a guaranteed starter. I think that's not necessarily a good thing for him or for us, because I think, especially off of the injury, it was always worrying to me that our replacement for Wijnaldum was this really young guy. So I think that he would benefit from having a guy or two to kind of replace ahead of him. He had Henderson to kind of knock off the spot in that right central midfield position, but he that wasn't a very tough challenge. Henderson hasn't been at his standard, and I see Carter's in the stream, and Carter is the resident Henderson supporter. If Carter hates Jordan Henderson is the context there, but it's really interesting to me. I want to kind of it's also a very interesting point from Carter, but I want to kind of go back to an earlier comment from Spectre before I get to a more recent one. In terms of when Harvey Elliott comes back, the very natural one, I think, is Cardiff in the Cup, because you have Arsenal on Thursday and then Crystal Palace on Sunday. Harvey Elliott isn't set to train before either of those matches, so he wouldn't appear, obviously. However, there's about a 2-week break. February 6th is when Liverpool plays against Cardiff at home in the Cup. Is that just the best possible position, time to play him? Drew, I'll go to you on that. Does that make perfect sense, Cardiff?
Yeah, I think expectations are low. Like, we're not expecting anything phenomenal in terms of it's not a requirement to win, number one, although everyone's expecting us to go through, but it's not a high pressure Premier League game for him to jump right back in. So he has the ability to kind of have that game as a throwaway in terms of his performance. I'm hoping that the rest of the team can get it done, whether or not he's in the squad, but that point proves that it's kind of the perfect game for him to ease into and really show what he can do. Like, that's where I want to see him take it, like where he puts in a performance that makes Klopp be like, all right, I can't not choose him for the next game, or at least a knock-on sub for the next Premier League.
And Dan, I'll go to you on that one before we get to one last point. Is Cardiff in about 3 weeks' time the perfect time for Harvey Elliott to make his return for Liverpool?
I think it's now, honestly, and obviously he's going to be risking his fitness because he recently came back. But I don't know if you guys remember, but Harvey Elliott was already running a month ago. He was already running outside of the pitch, and usually, what seems to be the case in this situation is that we gave him an extra month to recover and ease in. And with the situation that currently Liverpool are in, and obviously people think we're okay because we just beat Brentford 3-0 or whatever. But when you watch our games, our midfield is so dreadful at the moment. I'm not trying to hate on anybody, obviously, but our midfield just doesn't offer anything at all right now, more than its stability. When you have a stability in midfield, brilliantness or brightness from the forward line could give you goals, but not midfield. We need to add more brightness in midfield. We don't have that. We just have a stability. Henderson, Fabinho, Milner, those are players that give you stability. We need someone that can give you magic, attack, just attack more. And that's where Curtis Jones and Harvey Elliott, come in. And from the two, honestly, I think I would prefer a Harvey Elliott at least a few minutes so we can see if he's back to his best, I guess you can say, or if he's not ready, given just a few minutes game by game,
That makes sense. I want to hit on this question from LC Spectre. Obviously, you don't want to pit them against one another because they all can coexist. But obviously, it is an interesting question because you have Harvey Elliott, Curtis Jones, Cade Gordon, 3 players kind of broken in very, very recently. Curtis Jones, I think, is much further along in his development than the other 2. But Drew, I'll go to you with this one first. Of these 3 guys, who do you think bigger talent's a tough way to describe it? I'll say I'll let you leave it open to interpretation then on what bigger talent is for you between those 3 guys.
I think that Harvey Elliott's going to have the most illustrious career at Liverpool out of those 3. I think Cade Gordon's still very young. His physicality is weak. He's a teenager. He's 16 years old, so he has a lot of room to grow physically. And I don't know what's going to happen with that. Whereas Harvey Elliott has already jumped in, like he's had loan experience. He's gotten into the first team, and he showed first 3 games of the season, he was on it. He was one of the best players in the squad. He's got a physicality where it already looks like he's basically a man-child. So he almost reminds me of a low center of gravity, Messi-esque physique. So that for me is a little bit better than having still a foot of growth to get through, or 6-8 inches, where that awkward body change, you're going to have to get used to, your touch changes, all that kind of physical dynamics. It looks like Harvey Elliott's never going to grow another inch in his life, unfortunately for him, but his skills are only going to get better and better because he's got all the tools at his disposal right now. So for me, he's clearly the most skilled out of him and Curtis Jones. Cade Gordon, we'll see, but Cade Gordon's got a lot of ifs, ands, or maybes, whereas Harvey Elliott's already shown he can do the business in a Premier League side.
I love how Drew is just calmly just bullies the players. He's like, it looks like Harvey Elliott will never grow ever again. He's going to stay like
short for the rest of his life.
Yes.
It's like slight encouragement, little jabs to get him fueled for the game.
And Dan, I'll go to you with this one. I'll pull the comment up again. There's no harm, I think, in comparing them, but there's also there's no malice if you prefer Curtis Jones. Matty, I think, might prefer Curtis Jones. He's one of Curtis Jones' biggest fans. Of these 3 guys for you, Dan, biggest talent of the 3?
I think it's an obvious answer right here. And it everything just lays down in the age at the moment. On one side, you have Curtis Jones, who clearly is one of the best youngsters in the league. Okay, I'm gonna try to put it in these 2 ways. Curtis Jones is one of the best youngsters in the league. Harvey Elliott, on the other hand, is one of the best youngsters in the world. So Harvey Elliott was not only the youngest player to ever debut in the Premier League ever when he was 16 or 17 at Fulham. He also is starting for a Liverpool side at 18 years old. Curtis Jones is 20 years old. He barely got his chance last year after tons of injuries and whatnot. Okay, it's understandable. But I mean, Harvey Elliott is doing this right now at 18. And the only reason he's not doing this at 17 is because we just recently bought him from Fulham. If he was already at Liverpool, he was developed at Liverpool, I could assure you guys, he would be starting at Liverpool at 17 years old. He has the talent. And I know, hopefully, there's not many people watching this because they're going to make clips of this and they're going to start bullying me and whatnot. But he has the talent and the potential to be a next Mbappe. He's at the same level. Not saying he's better or the same player, but Mbappe at 17, 18 years old was already starting for Monaco. He was playing professionally at a high standard, high level. And that is the same thing that Harvey Elliott is doing right now. He's playing at 18 years old, 17 years old, at a world-class, top-class level. And he's basically starting in our midfield for one of the best teams in the world. So Like I said, hopefully nobody clips this and starts bullying me on social media. But Harvey Elliott has that, Mbappe type of player characteristic, which is just being a world-class player when you're 17, 18 years old.
I'll bully you, Dan. I'll bully you.
Privately, please.
I will privately bully you then. Look, there is a lot of expectation around him. I'm really fascinated to see when he comes back because he's got, and you know what, Anthony, that is best left unsaid. And I 100% agree with LFC Spectre. I know that it's fantastic that we're actually starting to see a few talents come through. It's actually a great point also made here by Haylor that, two of them were bought. So they didn't grow up in this academy, but that's fine because youth development is so volatile that sometimes you need to kind of jump the gun and say, maybe we couldn't develop a great amount of players from 8 to 16, but if we can get a few players in when they're 16 years old, we kind of finish off the rest of that development, which Liverpool have proven to be very, very good at. Once you're ready for the first team leap, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott is a great 3 players. Maybe Cade Gordon is going to become the 4th guy to really kind of in recent times make that leap. So I'd be surprised, Dan. You mentioned, do you want to see Harvey Elliott very soon? I'd be surprised if it was in the Prem against Crystal Palace. I'd be very surprised, but it'd be a welcome surprise if he was ready for that.
I mean, you guys know, knowing Klopp, he's probably going to play him in 2 months' time. But I feel like he's ready now. But Klopp, he's going to play it safe, and he's probably going to play it in a month's time or something like that.
Welshie coming in at the buzzer, about to end the stream. I think that this is my fundamental point. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm not a big fan of Henderson and Milner. They have great roles to play, but I just think that in a proper side, I think with proper midfield depth, Elliott would have a bit more to overtake to get into the side, and that'd be beneficial for everybody. But he's a great talent, and he's got a great future at Liverpool. So a couple matches coming up. Arsenal on Thursday. We'll have a watch along for that. Then we got Palace on Sunday away in the Premier League, and then a long break that will kind of encompass towards the end of the transfer window, January transfer window. But we'll have all the content you need here on the LFC Transfer Room. Should anything happen, again, I'm not here to mislead you. There's low odds of anything happening, but if anything does happen, we will be here to party with you if a sign is made by Liverpool Football Club in January.
Come on, we're just one injury away from a signing. You guys know it. An Origi injury or maybe a Minamino injury is going to bring a player. A Jota injury might bring a player too.
It's going to be very interesting the remainder of this month, the remainder of the season as a whole. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, follow us on all our social pages for all the content you need around Liverpool. Thanks to Drew and Dan for coming on. I've been Jack for the LFC Transfer. We'll catch you in the next video or stream. Take care.